Welcome back, good people. Today I'm going to try and make a response to one of Stevie Boy's missions in life. To make you as a man feel guilty about being a man. And to make you as a woman feel threatened by your life in the Western world. Or, in short, are we living in a rape culture in the Western world? Well, I'm not going to say what Stevie thinks. I will leave it up to Stevie. Stevie, go ahead.
One of the worst parts of this year's U.S. presidential election was how the candidacy of Donald Trump gave a platform and a megaphone to some of the most vile elements of American society. But one of the best parts of this year's election was how, by amplifying those harmful elements, it exposed them to mainstream scrutiny for the first time that I can remember.
Yeah, I'm sorry, he is a little bit long-winded. It will take him a while before he gets to the point where he blames the Western world for rape culture. But of course he starts with Donald Trump, because, well, he is, I don't know, the next president?
Didn't wind up making a difference in the result of the election, unfortunately, but you know the old saying, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, all hope in everything.
But there's always a silver lining, isn't there?
Yeah, I guess that depends on what you think a silver lining is.
Anyway, one of those harmful elements is rape culture. Rape culture is not a new concept, despite some anti-feminists insisting otherwise. Rape culture is an environment in which rape is prevalent and sexual violence against women is normalized and excused in the media and popular culture. That definition comes from the Marshall University Women's Center's webpage, which is a great starting point for learning about this subject. If you're looking for something a bit more in-depth, I would recommend this book. Transforming a Rape Culture, edited by Emily Buchwald, Pamela Fletcher, and Martha Roth, which was published in 1993, by the way.
So, because someone wrote a book about it, it all of a sudden is a good point? There have been books written about all sorts of silly subjects. That doesn't mean they're true now, does it?
The thing is, it worked for Scientology, and now feminism wants the same deal. They want to say shit, and you have to believe it. That's how it works.
Seems a tad bit unfair to make stuff up and then suddenly make it sound like it's real, though.
Yeah, I understand, but you have to remember, you have to listen and believe. They don't care about anything else. Just listen and believe.
The Marshall University Women's Center's webpage has a list of attitudes and behaviors that perpetuate rape culture, many of which Donald Trump has been demonstrating through his words and deeds for decades.
See? Listen and believe. I give you a list of things I say he did. Don't question me. Just listen and believe.
Well, I can't remember any of that. I mean, when did he ever say she asked for it? Or boys will be boys? Or when was he ever tolerant of sexual harassment? Or when did he ever say that inflating false rape report statistics was a good thing? None of these things make sense.
Yeah, but it's all about listen and believe, mate. I mean, just look at the last one. Teaching women to avoid getting raped instead of teaching men not to rape. As if men need to be taught not to rape. Most men never rape. But hey, that's not what feminism likes to think. Feminism likes to think, well, it's someone's fault, women are the victim, therefore man did it.
But for our purposes, let's focus on one particular example, the infamous Billy Bush tape, where Trump is heard bragging about how easy it is to assault women when you're a star. The tape begins with Trump bragging about unsuccessfully trying to sleep with a married woman. Then he goes on to boast that when you're a star, you can just start kissing women and they let you do it. You can do anything, even, quote, grab them by the pussy.
Hold on now. You can brag about something that you failed to do, right? That doesn't sound about right. How can you brag about something that you failed at doing? Oh, look at that. I nearly caught me a whale. Oh, I didn't caught anything, but I nearly caught me a whale. Ha ha.
Well, yes, but that's all because of listen and believe. I think you're bad, therefore you did something bad. Well, you didn't do it, but you bragged about not doing it, or at least admitted that you didn't do... Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Don't try to bring logic into this.
But that just means that you can make anything sound bad, whether it's true or not.
Yeah, but it's all about creating the narrative, isn't it? I mean, he was a bad person. Therefore, what he did was bad. Therefore, he wasn't admitting he did something and it didn't work. No, he was bragging that he tried it.
Following the release of the tape, Trump attempted to excuse his behavior by dismissing it as, quote, locker room talk. Someone dismissive of the concept of rape culture might point out that Donald Trump insists that he has never actually done any of the things that he brags about doing on the Billy Bush tape.
I don't get it. Even if he did do what he said on the Billy Bush tape, how is this a sign of rape culture?
One might also argue that these are the terrible attitudes of just one person, and they don't prove that rape culture is a valid concept when applied to the United States as a whole. Unfortunately, these arguments are refuted by the facts. The United States is a rape culture, and the reaction to the Billy Bush tape by a significant portion of the American people proves it.
I'm sorry, Steve, but opinions are not facts.
Are there any facts that support his claim, though?
No, because in all fairness, raping someone in America, as in the rest of the Western world, is illegal. You can go to jail for that shit. And saying that it still happens, that doesn't mean that it's accepted. That they normalize it is basically a lie. It is not normalized, because if it's normalized, then it wouldn't be illegal. It still is. This is yet another example of you have to listen and believe.
Can someone explain to me why this is all about Trump, though?
I don't think anyone can, to be honest.
Let's start with Trump's explanation that what we hear on the Billy Bush tape is simply, quote, locker room talk. I'm going to give Trump's words on that tape the most charitable reading possible and imagine that Trump has never actually done the sorts of things that he describes himself doing on that tape. For the sake of argument, I'm going to assume that what we hear Donald Trump saying on that tape is nothing more than, quote, locker room talk.
You know what? Let's not assume he didn't do anything. Let's assume everything he said is something he did. But then also, let's listen to what he actually says.
Even with that assumption in place, we still have Donald Trump bragging to his fellow men about how, thanks to his celebrity, he can force himself on women and molest them at will and get away with it.
Yeah, you know, that's not what he said, Steve.
She used to be great. She's still very beautiful. I moved on her, actually. You know, she was down in Palm Beach. I moved on her, and I failed. I'll admit it.
Whoa.
I did try and fuck her. She was married.
That's huge news there.
No, Nancy.
Yeah.
No, this was marriages. And I moved on her very heavily. In fact, I took her out furniture shopping.
So he moved on her. Doesn't specify what he did when he moved on her, but he got shot down and he accepted that. This is sexist. How?
I gotta use some Tic Tacs just in case I start kissing her. You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just like, I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy. You can do anything.
And what a bastard he is, using Tic Tacs so his breath won't smell of all the women he kissed before or something like that. I don't know. And the whole thing about letting you do something means that it's implied to be okay. Again, Steve, in another movie I addressed you on this. 90%, 95% of our communication is non-verbal. So, yeah, there is that.
It's not nice to do stuff when you're not sure if people will let you do it, though.
Yeah, you're right about that. And you don't know if people are okay with you doing it or not. But then it's up to them to let you know they don't like you doing something. I mean, saying no is acceptable, you know.
Look at those legs. All I can see is the legs.
No, it looks good.
Come on, shorty.
Oh, nice legs, huh?
And here he is talking about how she looks good. What a misogynist.
I don't know. I'm not really a leg man, so I don't get it.
Hello, how are you? Hi.
Mr. Trump, how
nice
are you?
seeing you.
Pleasure to
Terrific.
meet you.
Terrific. You know Billy Bush?
How are you?
Nice to see you. How you doing,
Very
Ariane?
good.
Doing very well, thank you. Are you ready to be a soap star?
We're ready. Let's go. Make me a soap star.
How about a little hug for the Donald? He just got off the
Would you
bus.
like a little hug,
Okay,
darling?
absolutely.
How
Melania
about a
said
hug
this
for the
was
bush?
Well, look at the misogyny in that. He even got her to call him darling. What a mind trick. And he used Billy to get her to hug him. The dude is pulling all the strings here.
Oh, be careful. Not too much sarcasm. People might not understand it.
I should actually.
It's hard to walk next to a guy like
Here, wait,
this.
hold on.
Yeah, you get in the middle. There we go.
good. That's
This is
better.
much better. This is.
That's better.
But yes, the telepathical powers of Donald Trump are legendary. I mean, he can make the woman go walk in the middle, and even though he makes a small move to the side, she pulls herself closer to him. What a fucking magician he is. I know, I said not too much sarcasm. Sorry, I'll stop. But, sorry, so far everything I've seen, is nothing really. Don't you agree? And if you are interested in the original, I've got a link to it and you can check it out yourself. You will see that I've not removed anything that was anything of import, or at least I don't think I did. But yeah, you know what? If you disagree, feel free to call me out on my bullshit, and I will respond to that too.
Okay, so let us all assume that all of these things actually happened and he actually did grab someone by the pussy and they let him. When are we going to get proof that America is a rape culture? I don't understand the connection, I guess.
Well, knowing Steve Shives, we will not get any proof that America is a rape culture, and it really has nothing to do with Donald Trump either.
If Donald Trump doesn't actually do those sorts of things to women, then he's making it up. He's bragging about imaginary sexual assaults to his fellow men because he assumes, correctly, as it turns out, judging by the reactions of the other men on that tape, that they will respond with approval and admiration.
Yeah, and he forced that woman to call him darling and pull him closer to her. So, is it just me, or do you just grab at anything you can and try to strangle it and make it sound like it's something it's not? I mean, he said that women would let him grab them by the pussy, which is consent. They let him. He basically said, okay, give us a kiss. Well, he didn't even say give us a kiss. Billy Bush said that. And then he walks into the place and she wants to put him closer to her. What a misogynist he must be. She pulls him closer to her. It's not his action, it's her action. But that doesn't count, right?
What was that definition of rape culture again? Don't go far, I'm going to need you again in a second.
Ooh, you're not one bit smug, are you?
Well, let's go for another definition then. Shall we go for the definition of consent? Because they let you do it is implied consent. And consent is to permit, approve or agree, comply or yield, according to dictionary.com. And then it says often followed by to or an infinitive. I'm not going to do that. But basically, he talks on how they consent. Not on how he assaults them, but on how they consent. Doesn't matter, right? Consent. Women can't give consent. They're babies, right? Oh, and just in case it wasn't clear, but to let someone do it is to allow or to permit them. Same dictionary, by the way.
Didn't you just tell me not to use logic with these guys?
Now let's consider how people responded to Trump's locker room talk excuse. True, many of us didn't buy it, but many of us did. In fact, many of us echoed it ourselves, saying that we and other men that we know talk about women that way all the time.
You do know that talking isn't the same as rape, right? And talking about women isn't something that is proven to cause rape culture. Or even is rape culture.
Well, yes, of course. I mean, he sets out to prove to you that we live in a rape culture, but at the same time, he wants you not to think about it because we don't, and there is no way for him to prove that we do.
I don't get it. There's plenty enough real problems out there, so why do you have to make one up?
They have to make up problems because they want to be the biggest victim. They want you to feel sorry for them and cater to their whims, always. That's what feminism has always been about. It's not about equality. It's about recognizing that some people have it better than they do, and therefore those some people are wrong, even though it's not true.
So not only was Trump correct when he assumed that his bragging about being able to sexually assault women would be met by the approval and the admiration of the other men on that Access Hollywood bus, many of us stepped forward and said that we do the exact same thing all the time. So if we live in a society where people regularly brag about sexually assaulting others in order to impress people, and we do it so regularly and are so comfortable with it that we seem to not understand why other people are upset by it, how might you describe such a society?
I don't get this. An environment in which rape is prevalent and in which sexual violence against women is normalized, but they gave consent. If you give consent, it's not sexual violence. And how is rape prevalent? You keep saying that rape is prevalent, but you haven't given us any proof of that.
The main reason he hasn't given us proof of rape is because rape in the Western world isn't that common. Or it happens way too often, don't get me wrong, but not as often as they would like you to believe. And you have to believe that it happens as often as they like you to believe, because otherwise there is no rape culture. So that's why they can't really point at examples of rape, because if they would, it would prove there is no rape culture, which goes against their narrative.
I still don't understand why they keep lying about it. I mean, there are real problems out there, so why make this shit up?
Unfortunately, in our current world, there is value in being a victim, and that is why.
And to anyone who would still argue that rape culture is not a valid way of looking at American society, let me reiterate that those who accepted and repeated Donald Trump's locker room talk excuse have already admitted that we live in such a culture where people feel at liberty to brag about committing sexual assault in order to impress their buddies. Whether or not they are actually committing these crimes is beside the point. The crime of sexual assault is taken so lightly that it's considered praiseworthy to claim that you do it.
Again, Steve, consent. It exists.
And if you have already admitted that we live in such a society, you have admitted that we live in... But wait, someone might object. According to that definition, a rape culture is not merely an environment where rape is excused and normalized, but where rape is prevalent. And if we are assuming for the sake of argument that Trump and others who engage in locker room talk aren't actually committing the sexual assaults they brag about committing, how can we say that rape is prevalent in the United States? Well, we can say that rape is prevalent in the United States because we have crime statistics testifying to that fact. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, in the year 2014, the most recent year for which I could find data, there were 284,350 rapes and sexual assaults reported in the U.S. To put that number in perspective, that same year there were 33,599 total gun-related deaths, according to the Centers for Disease Control. There were also 47,055 drug overdose deaths that year, again, according to the CDC. The number of gun deaths in the U.S. is considered by many of us to be a national tragedy, and the federal government has been conducting a so-called war on drugs since the Nixon administration. And yet in 2014, there were 8.5 times as many rapes and sexual assaults reported as there were gun deaths, and 6 times as many rapes and sexual assaults reported as there were drug overdose deaths.
Thank you for making it easy for me to find the numbers you used. So let me get those numbers up on the screen, shall I? See, these are the numbers you refer to. And don't get me wrong, the rape sexual assault bit is too high. I won't lie, it's almost 300,000 in 2014. It was 300,000 in 2014. But rape and sexual assault are both on the same, bracket. And sexual assault isn't rape. But let's pretend that all sexual assault is rape. Let's do that. Then that's still an awful lot of sexual assault rape, right? But then look at the one right below that one. Robbery. Hey, that's almost twice as much likely to happen. Then let's go to assault. That's 4 million. Then let's go to domestic violence. Wow, all men commit domestic violence. Yeah, no, because we know that 40% of domestic violence is perpetrated by women. So if we then say 40% of 1 million is domestic violence perpetrated by women, that alone is higher than the rape sexual assault number. Are we now living in a society where sexual assault is prevalent, but not as prevalent as domestic violence, therefore we live in a domestic violence culture? Or are we living in an assault culture, considering the fact that assault is, 20 times more likely to happen? Seriously, Steve. Yes, the number is too high. But it's not proof that we live in a culture that allows and normalizes rape.
Yeah, are you bringing logic into it again? I don't get this. You tell me not to do that. Why are you trying?
Yeah, I know, I really shouldn't, but this kind of does piss me off. I mean, yes, rape is a problem. But as these statistics show us, we have so many more problems out there. More prevalent than rape even. But we ignore those? Yes, rape needs to be dealt with, but doesn't all crime need to be dealt with?
Just in case that isn't pervasive enough for you, let me present for your consideration one final bit of information, also from the Bureau of Justice Statistics. On average, an estimated 211,200 rapes and sexual assaults went unreported to police each year between 2006 and 2010. Although serious violent crime was generally less likely to go unreported to the police than simple assault, a higher percentage of rape or sexual assault, 65%, than simple assault, 56%, victimizations went unreported over the 5-year period. So take the 284,350 rapes and sexual assaults reported in 2014 and assume there were at least another 200,000 that occurred but weren't reported. That's nearly 500,000 rapes and sexual assaults in the United States in a year.
And here you go assuming again. You assume 200,000 more victims. But you know what? I will give you those 200,000 more victims. Which brings the grand total up at roughly 500,000. I'm even rounding it up. 500,000 victims of sexual assault and rape. Now, first off, are all those victims female? Well, it doesn't say, does it? But even if they are, look at the rest of the numbers. There are other crime statistics that go over 500,000. Why are we in a rape culture? Why are we not in an assault culture? Can you explain that to me, please? And then there's this point my lovely girl made. You can't claim that women are strong and independent and in the same breath claim that they need the protection of men. One of the two can't be true.
An environment where rape is prevalent and sexual violence against women is normalized and excused in the media and popular culture. That's us. And Donald Trump is our mascot. And our next president.
See, even if we give you that number of almost 500,000 victims, which is terrible, don't get me wrong. One victim is one too many, don't get me wrong. Then that would still only be 1 in 600. According to the current numbers, it's 1 in 1,000 that is a victim of rape. Again, 1 in 1,000, also too much. 1 in 1,000,000 would be too much. But if we then look at aggravated assault, the number suddenly becomes 16 in 1,000. And we know that most victims of assault, are men. And I know we didn't talk about whether all the victims of rape were women, but if we are going to assume that they are, because the majority of victims are, then we can also assume that the ones from assault are all men, because the majority is, right? No, wrong. Assumption is wrong. Yes, there is too much rape going on. No, we do not live in a rape culture. Why are you peddling this narrative? Well, I know why you're peddling this narrative, but why are people still believing this bullshit? Anyway, this video, became a little bit longer than I was planning. Like, share, subscribe if you feel so inclined, and let me know what you think and whether you agree or do not agree, because I am curious about that.